Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. Are you trying to master the game of life without success? There are secrets and strategies to living your best life. We'll share some of them with you on today's show. Take advantage of this series to become an expert at relationships. All relationships. It's time to live the life that you deserve to live. Now, here's your host, Sandra Reish.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, a show that teaches you about living your best life. Excited to be here today. I've been traveling, and I actually have met a lot of our listeners recently and got such beautiful feedback on the show. It made me feel so good. So you know who you are if you're listening. Thank you so much for letting us know that what we're doing makes a difference. Radio is an interesting medium. I've got Melissa here with me. It's an interesting thing because a lot of the stuff we do, at the center is we're in front of people. Sorry, that's the Canadian in me. Yeah. We're in front of people, so we get an immediate idea, because if they have a straight face, we know they don't like it. If they have a good face, we know they like it. With radio, it's like faith. You have to operate from a position of faith. You don't know if people are listening or how they like it.
Yeah, because you don't get that feedback or body language, so you just have to hope that that people are listening. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we really thank you. Honestly, I'm just with a renewed amount of energy because of this feedback. People were telling me that that it does help them to work on living their best life. And I've got Melissa Henley here today. You know her. She's a therapist at the Montreal Center for Anxiety, Depression, an incredible therapist. And the entire team is made up of people who really have dedicated their lives to helping people live their best life. So before we get into it, I just want to tell you about our topic and invite you also to join the conversation. So you're listening to the show. I know generally people are shy to call in, but if you want to ask a question, get some free advice from two therapists, 1-866-472-5792. It would be our pleasure. If that makes you uncomfortable and you prefer to send an email, info@helpforanxietydepression.com, info@helpforanxietydepression.com, or you can always text us at 514-796-4357. One of my favorite topics comes up all the time, but we're going to hit it from a different angle. And I find it very interesting because just in one given day, it has come up over and over again for me, personally and professionally, which is relationships. Mm-hmm. Now, relationships is a huge topic because we're all in relationships, be it with a boss, be it with a friend, be it with a roommate, and be it with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, whoever. And yet, always say this, we don't get a rule book on relationships. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about the time we're living in now, Melissa, is that now we have a lot of science. So we do have a bit of a rule book. So I know when we talked about doing the show, I asked you, what do you think we should do it on? And we talked about doing a toolbox. What would be in a toolbox to have a good relationship? Mm-hmm. And that's a topic you thought was important. So first of all, Melissa Henley, I always refer to you incorrectly, certified counselor is the correct terminology, correct for you? Yeah. And to me, the title is so irrelevant because I'm in awe of you. She's super young and she's brilliant. It's a little scary for the older ones. She's amazing. And, someone was asking me today, Melissa, how each therapist joined and counselor joined the team. And I'm telling you, the universe guided it because I don't even know how we ended up meeting, how it ended up happening. Oh, yes, you wrote to me. But you have been such a breath of fresh air for so many people at the clinic. And I think that you represent, because of your youth, you represent a generation that's growing up with a lot of new rules about relationships that my generation didn't have. I know I'm sounding really old, but it's true. Mm-hmm. It is true. And what's it like for a young woman like yourself, before you teach other people, to yourself have so much more knowledge about relationships? That's really probably my first question of the day.
Yeah, I find that I love talking about this topic because you're right, no matter who we're in a relationship with, even if sometimes people don't want to be in a relationship, but we have relationships, whether it be people on our volleyball team or people on our soccer team or boss at work. So we do have these relationships, and it's really helped me in my own personal life. And so that has been really helpful. But I find too, with everything in our generations and the younger people, that with Facebook and social media, that we see everyone else being super happy and in love, and that can cause a lot of anxiety or stress if we don't feel that way. So
Do you think your generation, or like the younger people, if you will, are expecting more or less out of relationships before we get into a toolbox? I'm just curious. It just hit me that we're in a different age group. Yeah. And I think that I'm going to tell you why I asked that question after you answer it. Yeah. Do you think your age group expects more out of relationships or less than previous generations?
That's a good question. I know.
Yeah, I'm curious your thoughts.
I would think probably more because, again, we compare ourselves to a lot of other relationships, or we have this idea, which we'll talk about in more details, about this fantasy of how the relationship should be. And so I find that we place a lot of stress and importance on that. And especially, that there's this idea that, age and, you're getting into your 30s and you're supposed to find your partner and you're supposed to be getting married. And there's a lot of pressure there, even though times have evolved and changed, but that there's still this pressure that at a certain age you have to be at these life steps. And when
such a good point.
And when people are not at those life steps, that's when depression and anxiety can definitely sit in. But what are your opinions?
This is what I want to say is that, I always go to the experts. And so there's about 4 or 5 top experts in the world on relationships. And one of them is Dr. John Gottman. Yes. And when I was a young therapist, much like you, I went to see him speak. And he said that and this is a very important line, I want everyone to take this in, that people who expect more in relationships do better than people who expect little. Mm-hmm. And we're often told, lower your expectations, you expect too much. Actually, expecting a lot in your relationship will bring you a really great relationship. It's hard, yes, but expecting little is not good. It's not reaching for the stars. Yeah. I mean, this show is all about reaching for the stars. Everything I do, that's a very big thing. So you should not possibly be telling yourself, well, I just have to settle. No, that doesn't mean you don't choose your battles. Yeah. So I'm going to segue into the phone calls today because there were a few people that called me today and there are a few things that came up. Mm-hmm. And I want to we're going to talk about the toolbox, what you need to be in a healthy relationship. And we're going to talk about, I know you're excited to talk about the fantasy that we have.
One of my new favorite topics.
And that's actually when I wrote the Cinderella book, that's what it's about, how Cinderella grew up and became a happy, empowered woman, because I watch those fairy tales and life is nothing like that. So I'm with you. But I also wondered, I felt these 2 phone calls today were very telling. One call I got was from somebody who felt that they're not sure if they're in a relationship. I thought that was very interesting. And I have a comment on that, and I'm curious your thoughts. First of all, I think that if it's not clear if you're in a relationship, that is obviously a huge problem. Yes. But let me go further than that. I think that as women often, not always women, but often women, we're afraid to ask our partner, like, is this a relationship? Is this a committed fidelity relationship? And I think that's odd. Because if you went and got a job, you would ask what your salary is going to be. You would ask if I'm going to fire you in a week or 2. Mm-hmm. You'd want to know that. You sign a contract. How come with our hearts and our bodies, we're shy to ask that question? Mm-hmm. And do you agree that it's definitely like a normal question to say, like, hey, are we serious? Like, do we have something here?
Yeah, and I definitely see that in a lot of my clients. But again, this fear of clarifying the roles and clarifying what is this relationship. And so either we're scared we're going to push the other person away, or scared of this idea that we're going to seem too needy or too, so it's all these judgments that we place on ourselves that block us from getting what we want. And unfortunately, then we might be settling for things that are not okay.
Brilliant. So true. And so if we talk about, because you're hitting something very important, so if we talk about the fear, why someone would be afraid, because people are afraid. I hear this all the time, like they're afraid to say, like, for example, in your age group, you were talking about people, there's pressure about marriage. So if I'm a young woman, I'm 30, let's say, okay, and I'm dating someone for a while, I hear a lot, and this may be related to the question about are we in a relationship or not, but even to say, like, I remember, though, this question, like, do you have a plan for us? Like, are we moving towards the road towards marriage? A lot of women will tell me, I'm scared to say that because that will scare them away. Yeah. What's that all about, that fear? Because that doesn't make sense to me.
No.
And what's the fear about?
Well, the fear, again, is about pushing the other person away, but also maybe it's because then we start to lose ourselves in that relationship, and then we're really scared to ask for what we want and what we need. But why do you think this comes up in a relationship?
Well, I think that relationship is very valued. It's very valued.
Yeah.
And I think that you've got a really good point there that you start to lose yourself, because it starts to be that having a little snippet of a relationship is better than having no relationship.
Yes, so,
and on Straight Talk, I'd like to submit to you that as the older woman, is not true, because actually that's the beginning of the end. Mm-hmm. So when you're afraid to ask for what you need, you're already starting to, as you well said, disappear. Mm-hmm. You start to not exist. So you want to love someone, but love yourself more. Mm-hmm. And with the right person, would you agree that if you said, listen, I'm really into you, but like I'm looking for marriage, I'm looking for a serious relationship, I'm looking to have a child in the next 5 years, that the person would not run away? They might negotiate with you, but if it was a healthy relationship, that would not cause them to run away, right?
And what I tell my clients is that if it would cause them to run away, wouldn't you want to know now?
Yes, before you invest further.
Good
point.
And, as humans, we're really complicated. And so we have this urge and this need to be revealed and the need to be honest with ourselves. But we also are very scared. And that's why the masks start to come up, because we're really scared to reveal our true self and what we really want and what we need. And so we're afraid of either being too expressive, or we're scared to be not expressive enough. We're scared to be too assertive. We're scared to be not assertive enough. Too friendly, not friendly enough. And so it's like we flip-flop between our desire to reveal our true needs and wants, but we also have the desire to protect ourselves. And I think a lot of people then not say anything or settle as a way to protect ourselves from this fear of being rejected.
I think that's true. But however, those needs don't go away. And I think that there is a shame that we feel for asking for what we need. And it's part of the toolbox, isn't it? To sort of desire that, you're allowed to have your needs. They may have to be negotiated. So if you go to a partner and say, look, I'm looking for marriage, and the partner might say, well, I don't want to get married for 10 years, that's something you may have to talk about. But to not even be willing to negotiate on that. I mean, I've had that at the couple retreats where one wants to get married and one doesn't believe in the institution of marriage. Yeah. And I don't think anyone's done anything wrong there, but I think that's a serious thing that has to be negotiated, whether if someone believes in marriage and someone doesn't. Mm-hmm. The other person I spoke to today, which I thought was really interesting, is the concept of when the dynamics in a relationship where one person is sort of controlling and the other person's become passive, and then the passive person decides to want to take back some of the control, but the other person has no interest in giving back the control. Like, what's going on there, and what's that all about?
I think too that I see that a lot too, and I think that ties into this. Well, first we try to control things, and then we start to like you talk about this a lot, but we tend to overcompensate in our lives, and then that teaches our partner that they don't have to put in as much, so they start to undercompensate. So it's like already now this dynamic has been created, and when one tries to do something different, it stirs the pot. And so I think this goes back to my idea is that sometimes we hold on to this idea of a fantasy of a relationship, that we always try to assume that we want we try to make our partners into who we want them to be and not who they are. And I think that this ties into that control, because we might be controlling because it's like a secret wish that if we are controlling, that maybe that they can start to pick up some things, and that's the caretaker side, right? That we wish that they can take up and do more things, but unfortunately they don't.
Right. Such a good point. So true. I think though, at that point when the dynamics start to get out, first of all, we call that in psychology polarized. So when one is controlling and one is passive, or one is, as you said, over-functioning and one is under-functioning, it's a polarized relationship. And in psychology, polarized relationships are doomed. Yeah. So there can't be, I know, let's make it a little bit more personal so people can relate. I'm definitely a bit of an over-functioner. There's no question. I like to get things done. And early in my relationship, I would take care of everything. But then, of course, I'd be resentful when he wasn't stepping up. So it doesn't work. So I had to let go of some of that control. But again, you need a communication to have that, to work those things out, don't you?
Yeah, communication is always important. And that's part of the piece of the toolbox, is learning how to first understand these emotions, because a lot of times I communicate things, but I'm not really clear about what I'm feeling. And so it comes out really confused and messy, and I'm frustrated even more because the person doesn't understand what I'm feeling, but yet I don't understand what I'm feeling. So it's really important to first try to acknowledge what you're feeling and why this is upsetting you, and also understand your role that you're contributing to this, so that then you can communicate these feelings at a softer level to your partner.
So to review, and I think that we really are starting the toolbox. Now to review now, first of all, you have to sit with yourself and decide, what do you want out of a relationship? Yeah. Do you want a committed relationship? Do you want an open relationship? Do you want marriage? Do you want children? And I think that you have to get okay with that before you start the dance with someone else, and not feel that sense of shame for asking for what you need.
Yeah.
And so if the relationship is undefined, that's problematic, because it's subject to so many possible misunderstandings.
And so much fight, so much conflict.
Right. And yes, you have to also acknowledge that if you tell someone, I'm looking for marriage, and they say, I'm not, you have a decision to make. Yeah. So that's why people avoid it. Yeah. But like you said, it's you better to find out sooner rather than later. So that's step one. And I think step two, what you just really well explained, was the communication then, is you have to be clear on what is it that's bothering you, or what you need in the relationship to be able to move to the next level. I think that's, we're going to take a break in a couple of seconds, but I think that brings up where we're going to go when we come back from the break, which is that means that we're going to end up having some disagreements. And you see, that is part of the fear. Is the first beginning of the relationship is very fantasy-ish. So there's no disagreements. He completes me, he's finishing my sentences. 2 years later, he's interrupting me. He's not letting me speak. It changes a bit. But at first, it feels so wonderful. And when you suddenly are annoyed, you feel like, I don't want to rock the boat. Yeah. But actually rocking the boat is communication. Yeah. It's an important piece, isn't it?
It is. Because you don't want to rock the boat and you want to avoid it, but I guarantee you it's going to come out some other way. So you are creating anyways the conflict, but in maybe because he didn't do the dishes or something else.
Right. So because anger doesn't disappear.
No, it'll find a way to come out.
Right. Okay. So interesting. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk about different communication styles. I know that you have a list here that you want to talk about, where people can talk in good ways and bad ways as far as the communication styles. And also, I know you're very passionate, Melissa, about talking about the dangers of the fantasy. So I want to talk about the dangers of the fantasy. As I said, I wrote a book on this topic. I myself grew up with a lot of romantic fantasy. I was very, very romantic. And I use the past tense. It's not that I'm not romantic, but if things didn't work out exactly the way things should look in a movie, be it my birthday, be it New Year's Eve, I was distraught, Melissa. Has that ever happened to you, by the way? Yes. Distraught. Yeah. I'm not proud, but I'm admitting it. So we're going to take a break. Think about in your life how many times romantic fantasy comes to get you. And keep in mind that in the movies, they never show the couples fighting or shaving their armpits. They don't show you real life. They show you them sailing into the sunset. How often does that happen to you? Join the conversation. Give us a call at 1-866-472-5792. We'll be right back with the amazingly brilliant Melissa Hindley on Straight Talk with Sandra Reish.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Spa Munari is a full-service wellness day spa located at the heart of West Island, Quebec. Submerge yourself in beauty with one of our many treatments, specially catered to your needs. We offer facials, manicures, pedicures, hair removal, massages, body treatments, and so much more. Enjoy our ultimate relaxation experience with our spa packages. We offer a men's menu as well. Call us today to book your next appointment at 514-695-5040 or visit us on the web at spamunari.com. That's 514-695-5040 or spamunari.com.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats, and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
A fresh look at today's health. Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
So we are back. I was talking to Melissa on the break, and it really hits me that we've got a lot to talk about. Before we go any further, though, it's always important to me to give a special thank you to Spa Minari, our sponsor. If you're in Montreal listening to this and you want to take some time for yourself, a massage, a makeover, a facial, which is always so good for your own personal spirit, please call them at 514-695-5040. And if you mention Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, you will get 15% off. Again, 514-695-5040. Okay, I told Melissa there's two things I really want to get to here right now. The first one is going to be the fantasy. And just as a teaser, we're going to get to, we didn't quite finish, we realized, is if you're in a relationship and you're looking for the commitment to go to the next level, but you're uncomfortable with that, what do you do? So we're going to get to that. But first, what is it about the fantasy that has gotten you excited? Like you want to talk about that, I can tell. What is it?
Well, it's just a lot of times in relationships that, I often hear people say that, why, he should be able to do this, or he should be able to put away the dishes, or he should be able to I don't know, what's a good example?
He should remember to bring me flowers.
Yeah, remember to bring me flowers.
And he should know to talk to me more often.
Yeah, and he should know that when I'm upset, this is what I need, right?
Yes.
So we often place
Pump up my birthday.
Yeah.
Sorry, don't get me started.
But we often place these should statements on our relationship, and although that's what we would do for the person, right, it's not necessarily that they would do that for us. And then we get hooked up on this idea that, if I want this, he should know, he should mind read, or she should mind read, right? And so we get hooked up on this idea and this fancy, and then we're starting to treat the relationship and trying to change the person to become who we want them to be and not who they are, and this takes them away. And so if we're not feeling heard, like if the other person, let's look at the other person's point of view. If I'm trying to change you to how I want you to be, how is that other person going to feel?
The person who's going to be like me?
Yeah, like if I was trying to change you into a person that I wanted you to be.
It'll make me feel like you don't like who I currently am.
Yeah, so I'm sending you a very negative message.
Right.
And of course you're going to get frustrated.
And dig my heels.
And dig your heels.
Yeah. And
so that's when you might even do more, like rebellion can get in, and you might even do more the opposite, right? And now you're frustrated. And then a lot of my people that I see say, well, I don't understand why he or she wants a divorce. And it goes back, well, if we start to divorce our own feelings towards the person, right? If we don't accept the person for who they are. Now, of course, if it's an abusive relationship, we want to make sure that we get safety first. But if it's a relationship and we're not accepting them for who they are, if my boyfriend wants to play video games or do something, I have to, I can communicate that, I'd like to do something else. But, if I go, well, he should, spend time with me and watch the show that I want, well, maybe he doesn't.
I think that's a fair point, and I think that I would add on to it that there's then the flip side of that is, I'm going to just accept anything you play video games 5 hours a day. That's fine with me, and I think that's dangerous too. So I think we have to negotiate.
perfect, because
Yeah.
that's, I 100% agree, because then we can flip, it could go to two extremes. It's either the all or
That's
nothing.
the passive again.
Yeah.
It's like I'm supposed to accept my husband as he is,
Yeah.
so he can, watch football 24/7, and I'll just put my needs to the side, which
Yeah.
was the beginning of martyrdom. And like I like to say, I've never met a happy martyr in my life.
Yeah.
So that's not going to fly.
No, it's not, because
So
it's either
it's
you're giving.
accepting who they are. Like in the football example, my husband really does love football. So the football example is to accept that, because I grew up with parents who didn't watch sports, and I fell in love with a man who's really into sports. It was very odd for me.
Yeah.
So at first I was that woman who was like trying to no, that's not good.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Yeah.
He's not accepting who they are.
Yeah.
Very bad. But by the same token, the other person has to accept who you are too. So
Yeah.
that's when it's a team sport. Relationships is a team sport. So how do we make it work that I honor that you love football, but I don't feel like I become a football widow for 4 months or whatever amounts of months they are. We're right in it right now.
Yes.
Okay. How do you negotiate that? So that's an important line there.
Very, and I think that's what comes down to the compromising.
Yeah.
And I like what you said the other day, is that when we start to do so, but we have to communicate that. So we have to communicate that we need more time, whatever it is. Like maybe I need you to take me out for a date more often, right? So it's like if I need to communicate that, then that could be the compromise, that okay, we can have our date, but then this night then you're watching football. So it does need to have a compromise, but you need to express yourself in that. So not passively, not aggressively, but just communicate. This is what
So that's your communication styles. Not passively, not aggressively, assertively. Okay, so then I have a question which leads to the second example and I've asked it already to you tonight, but I'm going to ask again, is clearly people don't do that.
Yeah.
Whether it's the football example, whether it's the let's get married example, what stops them? What is that all about? Why do people, I know the answer, but I'm curious your thoughts on it, because we don't ask for what we need. Now, partly it's because of the fantasy, he should know.
Yes. You should know.
But what if it's something you really like? It's really first of all, I'm telling you all, if you're listening, he doesn't know. So forget this example. Forget the idea that he should know. He doesn't know because he's not you. Yeah. He's not you. Nobody knows. You don't know what I need, and I don't know what you need unless we speak.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to with this idea that it's the fantasy. If the person patiently waits.
Oh God.
Then it's this idea that things will change, and that maybe one day it'll happen. And
I think that's really dangerous, if I dare say so myself.
Yeah, because then what we see is that people are just waiting, and then resentment,
and not sure why. Why would you be? Is this possibly this thing that I hear often from people, that if I have to tell him it doesn't have the same value? So if I say to my husband, I want to have a romantic date night, it's not as valuable as if he came up with it on his own, because that fantasy too, I used to have that also. Yeah. It doesn't count. Or if I tell him I'd like to be married in 2 years from now, it's not as romantic as if he came to that on his own.
But then again, it goes back to your fairy tale that this knight in shining armor has to come in and surprise us, and it has to be this big thing. And
can't they still surprise us once you've put your need down also?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and there's something you want in the relationship, and I know a couple of people I spoke to today, and that's just a couple of people, but we met a lot of people this week at the lecture series in Montreal here, and there's things people really crave, but they're afraid to say what they need. Yeah. What is the worst that could happen if you ask for what you need? Yeah. Well, I'm really curious. I remember, if we're talking about commitment, I remember, my husband and I got together, and I remember at that point in my life, I felt like I was old enough that I felt like I'm not really, I'm not looking for casual dating. And I felt like at this point in my life, I was looking definitely for it to eventually move towards a commitment. And then at one point I started to feel I'd like to have a child. And so I don't think that my husband needed to be pushed, but I think that me saying this is the timeline and the idea of how I would like to see things go, how does that sit with you? I still only think it actually made him feel safer and clearer. And he was able to say, hey, sounds good to me. That worked out for me. But I think my husband and many partners, women and men, are naturally avoidant. I think he was very in love with me, but I don't think he would have necessarily taken that step, because he might not have gone around to it. And I think this comes to entitlement as a woman or as whoever's listening, a male or a female, to be able to believe that you're entitled to get what you want in a relationship, says the older woman here. What do you think, Melissa?
No, it's true, and we have to, we have to believe in ourselves that we deserve this, and we deserve to ask for what we want, and that's what can be really challenging, and when we don't know also too how to communicate it. So that could be a next step: is how do we bring this up? How do we communicate this?
Right. Well, it depends what we're talking about. I mean, I would call this a relationship talk.
Yeah.
Having a relationship talk. And I think that's a great question, because when I have a relationship talk now, and I keep referring to myself as older, what I mean by that is I've been in this relationship for a while, and still to this day, there's issues that come up. I mean, I'm married, I have kids, so I'm not having that talk anymore. But there's other talks that come up. So my advice would be to start with something like, start with a nice, friendly environment. We do it often at the coffee shop. Those people who know me know that I'm big on coffee shops. Yeah. And we start with sort of a pleasant moment. And then I go, there's something I need to talk to you about. There's something that I'm a little concerned about. And can we talk about this? Is this a good time for you? Okay. And there's no attack on the person. So if we were talking about commitment, it would be like, I'm feeling so happy in this relationship and it's going so well. And I'm thinking I'm excited to spend the rest of my life with you, and marriage is really important to me. Is it important to you? Yeah. I just, I think that's the hardest example, or one of the hardest. And babies is another one. Yeah. I think keeping it quiet does you no service.
It's true, because oftentimes, and the dangers of this is that if they're not committing, or whether it's your first dating, or whether it's a new relationship or a friendship, or again when we talked about clarifying what this is, I find that a lot of times we interpret other people's behaviors. So if they're not committing to whatever you need, and they're not because they don't know yet, but once you communicated it, but we're scared that we're interpreting as if they don't care, or they don't care enough, or that maybe I'm not good enough, or so these interpretations start to come up. And so that's almost why too we're afraid to say it or to ask what this is, because we're scared that proves that very insecure thought that we're not good enough.
I think you've really hit something big there. So that's the primal fear. The fear. And we're not worth it.
That we're not worth it, and that we're not good enough, and we're scared that this conversation is going to prove that. But so we avoid, right? Okay, so the dangers of the avoidance. Yes. What are the dangers? Dangers. Like we said before, I think resentment starts to build up, and a lot of misinterpretations can be resulted. Like if I sit down, maybe I'll be really surprised about the conversation that's going to come out. In my head, I'm scared and I'm avoiding it, but that maybe it'll go really well. So in our toolbox of relationships, having difficult conversations we need that in the toolbox, right? Yes, we need that. And the ability. How do we learn, Melissa, to have a difficult conversation? How do we learn that? Well, I think first it comes up to, for what I would suggest was to try, and if you're misinterpreting, is to try and challenge those thoughts first, because now we're going into mind reading and we're fortune telling how things are going to go, and we don't know yet, right? Yeah. And so we have to, because that's our own wounds. If we're avoiding it because we don't feel good enough, or that we're scared that it'll prove that he or she doesn't care, we have to go and heal those wounds first. To reassure ourselves that, I matter no matter how the conversation ends. I love that. I matter. Say that again. That I matter no matter how the conversation goes. Yeah. Right? And my needs matter. And my needs matter. And again, it goes back to, wouldn't you want to know now versus later on? Right. And you don't want that resentment pouring into your body. No. It's almost like a bit of a boundary, wouldn't you say? Yeah. It's what are your boundaries? So I'm just about to leave for the Women's Weekend that I do, and it's always a topic for the women. Mm-hmm. I've done it so many times, but boundaries are so challenging for us. Challenging. And we're so afraid to put down some laws, but yet the policemen put down laws. Like, what would society be like without laws? But then, I also think that we have fantasies about ourselves. So we have fantasies that we have to be the nice, perfect. Oh my goodness. But we have fantasies of how we want other people to see us. Okay, so this brings up a point that is in the Cinderella book, actually, and is that respect. Mm-hmm. 2 points that I'm very big on, Sandraisms. Respect is not negotiable, and love without respect, and I repeat, love without respect will die.
What does that mean to you when I say that as my young therapist colleague? Love without respect will die.
Well, I think that goes back to if we don't respect each other, like the foundation has to be honesty and respect for each other. And if it comes out in a very different, nasty way of communicating, then where can you go from that? If you're destroying the other person and making them feel small, where can you go from that?
Right. So that would mean, just do it in practical terms, that would mean that if your partner or you goes to the other person and says, here's a need I have, like, can we talk about it? And the other person goes, don't be ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're being too sensitive. Get over it. That's a bad need. That's being disrespectful.
Yes. And we don't feel safe and secure in that relationship.
Oh, I wish I knew that when I was a young woman, because I was big on love. So if somebody told me you're being too sensitive, I kind of assumed I was.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very strange statement, because to be too sensitive could easily be construed that the other person is being too insensitive. Who says?
Yeah.
Who's being insensitive? True. Who's being sensitive?
It's true.
And the thing is, your need is your need is your need. And I think what I've really learned is that you cannot apologize for who you are.
No.
So you could be open to negotiation, though.
Yes. It doesn't mean, so your emotions are just signals, right? So
Yes.
They're just,
I hit her.
So emotions are just signals, and whether they're right or wrong, or you have to test them out first. They're just important information. It doesn't mean that they're facts. It doesn't mean that they're the truth, but they're just information. And so we need to test out, like, how do we know if that information, like, we need to test it out in order to understand if it is valid, or, but like, I loved how you said that too. Our emotions sometimes are irrational, and they
actually, emotions by definition are irrational.
Yeah, and they don't make sense, but
they're not supposed to.
No. But they're just very important information. So we need to use that information to our advantage versus letting us be either suppressed and more passive, and then letting go of our needs.
Well, first of all, I think that emotions not being rational, the point of that is that I think that people try to take emotions and try to put them into a logical equation, and they sometimes do that against you to say you're making no sense. But again, any emotion doesn't fit into a logical equation. And I think that your understanding of emotions, like you spoke this week at the lecture series, and may I say how incredibly brilliant you were.
Thank you.
And the audience was just like eating it up, because you talked about emotions being signals. And I love that, because they're your guidance system. You must listen to them if they're telling you something. Now, but that doesn't mean that there's no room for negotiation. Again, in practical terms, if I go to my partner and say, I need more time together, and he says, how much time? And I go, every night.
Yeah.
He might say, well, that's too much time for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's the mutual respect, because I'm scared if people listen to this, they go from one extreme to the other. They go from being passive to being overly entitled. Like, I heard on Straight Talk with Sandra Reich, I'm allowed to express my emotions, so you need to do what I want.
Yes. No. Any extremes, the all or nothing, extremes are very, very dangerous. We wanna stay somewhere in the gray zone, in the middle.
Okay, we're gonna take a break, but I have one teaser question for you. Melissa, in a sentence, someone who has a need right now, be it a further commitment, be it more time together, whatever, and is really too afraid to ask for it, do you have a sentence of advice for that person?
Afraid to ask for what they want?
Yeah. They're afraid of fallout.
Yeah, like I said, just trying to give yourself, if you can't get it from that person, right, or you're scared to, just try to give that to yourself. Understand what your emotions are, and it's almost as if you're talking to a child. You would never tell that little girl or little boy that they don't matter and that they're not worth saying something. So just try to reassure yourself and kind of be your own cheerleader. So we're moving to the direction of being able to speak to the other person. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Straight Talk with Sandra Reich. We're discussing relationships with Melissa Hindley. And where are we going to from on this other side of the break? How to feel safe and secure in our relationships. Such an important topic. We'll be right back.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Change your life forever with the latest cutting-edge products for home study treatment for anxiety, featuring the clinical director of the Montreal Center for Anxiety and Depression and host of Straight Talk, Sandra Reish. Sandra is joined by top therapist Georgia Dow in this revolutionary anxiety videos therapy series. Thousands of people have benefited from this scientifically proven treatment approach. Isn't it time you chose yourself? Visit anxiety-videos.com right now. That's anxiety-videos.com and change your life forever.
Spa Munari is a full-service wellness day spa located at the heart of West Island, Quebec. Submerge yourself in beauty with one of our many treatments, specially catered to your needs. We offer facials, manicures, pedicures, hair removal, massages, body treatments, and so much more. Enjoy our ultimate relaxation experience with our spa packages. We offer a men's menu as well. Call us today to book your next appointment at 514-695-5040 or visit us on the web at spamunari.com. That's 514-695-5040 or spamunari.com.
Join the therapist who is affectionately known as the Couple Whisperer, Sandra Reish, on her famous couple retreats and change your life forever. Sandra offers couple retreats in beautiful locations several times a year that can radically change your love life. Couples describe her retreats as life-changing. Regain that loving feeling, bring your intimacy to a new level, and rediscover excitement and joy. Find out more at helpforanxietydepression.com or call 514-796-4357. We all want love and safety. Now you can have it. Call 514-796-4357 or helpforanxietydepression.com.
Your life, your health, your network. This is Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. To connect with the program today, please call 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email to info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Now, back to Straight Talk. Here's Sandra Reish.
So we are back on Straight Talk. Lots to talk about, and we sort of said we were going to come back and talk a little bit more about emotions. And I just want to, before we go any further, if you're in the Montreal area, I do want to mention that you are going to be running a group on emotions, mindfulness, and anxiety.
Yeah.
I feel like you should say a few words about that.
Yes. So, life is so fast-paced and there's a lot of things going on, but one way that we can definitely use our emotions to our advantage, like I keep referring to that, and learning what to do with because again, we're not taught what to do with our emotions. We're not taught, this is what you do with anger, this is what you do with sadness. So my group, what we're going to be doing is learning to understand our emotions using mindfulness, and also it's an excellent way to not let these emotions take over and control us. So we're in control.
That's an important point, because that's another thing. Emotions are our guidance system, but we sometimes have to calm down before we have a conversation with someone. So how does mindfulness play a role in my relationship?
Yeah, so it's definitely about understanding what you're going through, labeling, recognizing. Every emotion has a physiological response, meaning my body's going to react. So if I'm feeling anxious, my heart's going to start palpitating. So these are all important information, but mindfulness will help me be in the present moment, will help me to use techniques to help calm the emotions down so that they're not controlling us, helping us not to judge our emotions, right? Not to judge our thoughts, and just not getting too caught up onto a negative thought. Sometimes we can let those negative thoughts just ruminate, and then a lot of times we think that in bed right before we're going to sleep. Good time to have these negative thoughts roaming around.
God, the worst fights in my marriage have been when I had those kinds of conversations. Had to learn that the hard way.
And then we're losing sleep.
So mindfulness helps to slow it down and
think, use techniques. And go ahead. What I like about this group is that it's very practical, that talking is very important, but there's also very skills and that you can use to help to regulate these emotions.
So you can contact us if you're interested in the group through the Facebook page, or you can call us at 514-777-4530. Let's continue in the discussion in terms of what I really like this idea you brought up on the break to me of how do we decide what we want in a partner to begin with. I think that's a good idea, to have an idea of what you want before you sort of start out in the world of love.
Yeah. And
even if you're already in a relationship, it's a good idea to know what you want, because you can't have everything. So you have to be clear.
You have to be clear. And it sounds silly, but even if we just try to create a list of like things, qualities that you admire, that you like, qualities that you dislike, or I call them kind of red or green flags. So, just trying to have an idea of what's important to you, and not to say that, if you meet someone and they're like, totally against, like if it's important to you to meet someone of a, I don't know, like a certain, like, if you meet someone that doesn't fit like, let's say you're like, oh, it's really important to me to meet someone that plays sports, and then you have someone that you're meeting someone that doesn't play sports, not, it to recognize that that's important to you, but it's not a dead end deal.
Well, I think that's really important, actually, because when I ask people to make a list, I really ask them to order it, because people say, I want it to be tall. I'm talking to women now. Yeah. Tall, dark, handsome, rich, this. And I say, okay, well, where's loyalty?
Yeah.
And where's, reliability, So then they say, oh, that's important too. I go, well, then that needs to be higher up on the list.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if someone doesn't play sports, you can negotiate a little bit more than if someone's not loyal to you. But I think we don't take the time to realize that's so important. And I think that the first time you go on a date with someone and they cancel and didn't let you know, or didn't call and didn't show up, that unfortunately is your first warning bell about reliability. If reliability is important to you, and it sure is important to me.
Yeah. And then sometimes we latch on again to this idea that, well, we give too many excuses, or we latch on the idea, well, I really want a relationship, and so I'm going to settle for anyone at this point. Then we can get caught into a really bad negative cycle, because then what message are we sending? If we accept this, what message are we sending to them?
Oh, a message that we're really, like, I like to say, like I call it, instead of being a diamond, being a zircon. I use that example because diamonds cost a lot of money. You don't have to be into diamonds, but we tend to, when something costs a lot of money, we treat it with care and value, like it's something special. Yeah. And when we start to negotiate ourselves, we become like the dollar store zircon earrings that you tend to let fly on your floor, and it doesn't really make sense because they look the same, but you don't treat them the same. Yeah. We value as humans what we work for. Yeah. I definitely want people to hear that. We value what we work for. It's an adaptive quality. There's no question, when you go back to hunters-gatherers, that when men went out to hunt, it took all day, and it was a big hunt. And that was like, that's really, they got a lot of vitamins from that. Like, here I am with my hunt. And when men or women watch sports, it's very similar to that hunt. You're following a puck on the hockey rink, and so on and so forth. So we value what we work for. If we don't work for something, we tend not to value it, which is why we often hear very nice men and nice women, quote unquote, ending up feeling like they were not treated well. Yeah. So it's not to say you won't be nice, but you definitely want to be diamondish. Yeah. As I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it goes back to our idea that, well, if I say something, I'm going to be considered not
you can say it on the show.
Not very nice word.
You can say the word on the show.
And if I don't say anything, then again, you're sending a very negative message. So I would just try to be curious first, without going into assumptions. If you're meeting someone the first time and that they stood you up, or that they didn't they canceled last minute, or whatever the case may be, but just to try to be curious about it. And I think that's what I love about your couple retreats, is that you go through the communication styles and how to balance this kind of the need to communicate and put your needs first, and the compromising.
Yes, well, actually, the next one I'm going to in Mexico, it's coming up soon. It's in November for anyone who's interested. But I really do the work of John Gottman, and I don't know how familiar you are with the Four Horsemen.
Yes.
I want to mention them right now because the Four Horsemen are predictors of divorce. Over a 90% predictor of divorce in a relationship if you're doing these things during an argument. They are defensiveness, contempt, stonewalling, and criticism. So when you're having that difficult discussion, if one of you is rolling your eyes, or one of you is walking away, or you're just like going after the person, like you're just insensitive, you're unkind, you're this, you're that. These things predict divorce more than the fight itself. Fighting does not predict divorce. So we're going to get into that at the couple retreat. And we definitely want people, even if you're not coming to couple retreat, to understand that that is not a communication style that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
So we have to learn how to fight fairly and not do those kinds of things.
And I like to how you say that it's not the fighting that's the issue, it's how you're fighting.
Yes, as a matter of fact, couples who don't fight have an even worse statistic. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Fighting is still connecting. When you stop fighting, there's not really much of a connection going on at all. So if you're fighting, it's not over. And that's more good news I want to get out there is my clients know, or when people show up to see me, I say you got to earn your way out of a relationship. You're not out yet. Meaning, if you're still fighting, there's still something between you guys, and that's a good thing, but we got to find a better way of dealing with it. And so that's also a lot of Gottman's work that I teach, and you probably do too, is teaching people to build something called love maps and a concept called soft startup, where you have a conversation with someone and you start in a soft way, not an aggressive way, but still firm and assertive.
Mm-hmm. You can do both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So what else do you think is, what do you think leads to all this anxiety and depression and pitfalls in relationships? Like, I know you came here with some serious stuff you wanted to say on the radio. The mic is in front of you. Go, girl, go.
Yeah. Well, definitely the communication style. So if we talked about, you mentioned stonewalling. So this is when in a conversation, in a conflict, when the person's fighting and the person just, it literally becomes a stone wall, or they walk away, right? And this can be very rejecting, but also really damaging. And abandoning, yes. Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask you. Why is this so damaging?
Oh, it's actually one of all the four horsemen, it's the worst one, because it's taking all control away from the other person. So you're talking to someone and they refuse to talk to you, not to mention that it's combined with contempt. And contempt, I don't know if we think about it, contempt is disgust. So you're now showing the person you love that they disgust you. There's almost, in a way, I don't want to say there's no coming back from that, but some damage has incurred. You don't want to look at your partner ever with disgust. So yes, they're triggering you, and yes, they're making you feel bad. That's okay, you're annoyed. But stonewalling or refusing to have a conversation, how about instead taking a break and saying, you know what, I can't deal right now. It's too rough what you're saying, and I feel like I might say something I'm going to regret. Let's take a break for a half hour and let's meet up in a half hour again.
Yeah, and this technique is even referred to as you're putting it in the parking lot, meaning you're parking your car.
I love that. I didn't know that expression. No.
So you're putting your car in the parking lot and you're going to come back to it, right? We're not going to leave our car there. So put this argument in the parking lot that you do. Like, I'm the type of person that when I fight, I need it resolved now.
Yeah, I'm like that too.
Yeah, now, yesterday. Probably.
Oh, I love that. Now. I'm so glad to hear you're like that.
Yes, I am.
So if we ever have a fight, we'll be fine.
We'll be fine because it'll never last. And
I didn't think you were like that.
Oh, no, I need it now, right?
Me too.
But some people
you tend to be attracted to the opposite. Is your partner opposite as mine is? He does not need it to be discussed. And not only that, he'd prefer to discuss it in 3 weeks.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, is that I need to respect my need, and because I don't want to feel abandoned, and I want to make sure that I don't, as long as I'm reassured that there'll be some resolution, then I can wait. But when I feel like there's no resolution in sight, that's when I get really anxious.
So how have you negotiated that in your relationship?
Well, that's what I communicate, that I validate him, that I understand, that you need space, and I respect that. But this, when you ask for space, I need you to communicate that you need space, not just take it, and also to come back to it. Come back to your car in the parking lot.
Gosh, so well said. Melissa, thank you so much again for coming on Straight Talk. You have so much brilliance. And so much to offer, and so much to teach people about emotions and relationships. If people do want to reach you, be part of your group, or be in touch with you in some way, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you could call the center at 514-777-4530, or you can email me at Hindley, Hindley, Melissa, MELISSA, @gmail.com.
I feel like looking at your face, there was a thought you wanted to share before I wrap it up. We're just about out of time. Very quickly. Last thoughts.
Last thoughts is my take-home message for today is that once we learn and understand our wounds and our emotions and understanding, put our needs first, that once we have a better relationship with ourselves, then we can have a healthier relationship with other people.
Oh, very well said. Thank you so much for coming by and joining us on Straight Talk.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Spa Minari, for helping to make this show possible, and especially like to thank our listeners for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish and those very kind people who told me that they enjoyed the show. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. I'd like to invite you all to come back next week for another interesting topic. If you're interested in our retreats, therapy, or any the groups, anything that was mentioned on this show or previous shows, check out helpforanxietydepression.com. You can also receive some cool free gifts if you go to straighttalksandrareish.com and add the /radio gifts, and you get all sorts of gifts for free, which are cool. Check out the Facebook page, Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. Feel free to leave a question for me or any of my guests. And remember to like us while you're there. You can hear this and any prior show as a podcast on my website, straighttalksandrareish.com, on the podcast app of your iPhone, on iTunes under Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. And always feel free to drop me a comment or a question at info@helpforanxietydepression.com. Lastly, if you're a professional and you're looking for keynote speakers or training on anxiety, depression, emotional regulation, or living a purposeful life, remember that I am your source for evidence-based practice and education. My name is Sandra Reish, and I promise I'll help you learn to live your best life again next Thursday, same time, same channel. In the meanwhile, this is Straight Talk with Sandra Reish, and please keep your eyes on the stars.
Thank you for listening to Straight Talk with Sandra Reish. We hope you've enjoyed today's show, and we'll tune in again next Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. Now, go live your best life.